Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nostalgia Dive, a series where I take a look at different forms of media from my past and see if it holds up now. Today, we'll be talking about the precursor to one of Rockstar's legendary IPs, one that I feel sometimes gets hate for how different it is from its more refined counterparts that we got much later. I'm talking about none other than the spaghetti western arcade shooter Red Dead Revolver for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. For these videos, if you don't already know, I like to talk a little bit about my personal connection to the game, the development, mechanics and gameplay, a bit of the story, then we move on to what I think is good and bad about the game. Then, if I personally believe the game holds up and my nostalgia is correct in thinking it is a certified banger, then we will score it between 1 and 5. So aside from that, strap on your spurs, polish that shooting iron, and let's talk about Red Dead Revolver. So if you've seen my other videos, I usually have a story or some kind of memory to share about the subject of my video. This one is a little hazier from what I can recall. For one thing, I actually can't remember if I got this for my birthday or for Christmas, as both kind of sit in the colder months of the year. What I do know is that this game was not my first M-rated game I had ever played. That honor actually went to GTA 3, which is of course also associated with Rockstar. Now, I do remember that Red Dead Revolver was a game I literally played nonstop, as I'm a sucker for Western cowboy stuff, as well as pirates. Obviously, this game checked one of those boxes for me. I remember I had played it so much back in that day that I had almost capped out the money that you would have been able to get throughout your playthroughs, and I had bought every gun, upgrade, completed every mission, and other than maybe a few Final Fantasy games before that, this was one of my 100% completions. And this was way before achievements, so I did this without having any trophies or anything like that, and really was just a flex on my friends. I have went back and played Red Dead Revolver probably more than any other PS2 game, not including RPGs. It is quick to play and easy to pick up. It's really one of those games you could put on your list of play it and beat it at least once a year. If you're anything like me, then you probably do have a list like that. I think it is safe to say that we can talk about RDR's interesting development. Funny enough, Red Dead Revolver was not a Rockstar original IP. It was in the process of being made by a company called Angel Studio, who at the time had made quite a name for themselves. And not just for video games, but they also did music videos and commercials. You name it, they probably had a small hand in some branch of the show business. They actually had made a little bit of a relationship with Capcom and had received some money to do work on a game originally called SWAT. From what I found on the internet, it looked like it was going to be a game with one level where you picked out a squad of characters to infiltrate the building and take out the enemies. This then got changed to multiple missions, which at the time, you just fought robots for some reason. I don't know, man. Capcom is weird. Then later, it got turned into more of a supernatural elements kind of thing that Capcom originally wanted. And either right before or right after this, it was named Red Dead Revolver. It was actually pretty straightforward on why they chose it. Red is the main character. It is also kind of playing into his hand being red because of the burn he receives at the beginning of the game. This also kind of plays into those old-style westerns that kind of mashed words together to give it a unique name. Angel Studios, being an American company, knew what westerns look like and should be like. Capcom, who kept adding these silly things and suggestions, did not really know what westerns were. And if they did, I want to know what western movies or show had an overweight guy blowing himself up with dynamite to kill the protagonist.
You gonna blow up real good, cowboy! Yes!
So anyway, Capcom announced Red Dead early in 2002, even though it wasn't close to being complete. The problem, as it seemed, was the split in creativity. All these additions and changes also made the game very unplayable. They had no game. After a year or two of development, Dan Houser, yes, that Dan Houser, one of two Houser brothers that came by to try out the game, and from what he actually was able to play, he liked it. He always wanted to have Rockstar create a Western game. Not long after this, however, Capcom didn't think that this was going to go anywhere, so they actually canceled the game. However, Dan brought the idea to maybe purchase Angel Studios to Rockstar's parent company Take-Two, as well as purchasing the Red Dead IP from Capcom. Rockstar had been fond of Angel Studios' work and would get their experience to work on some of other Rockstar's other IPs, so Take-Two bought Angel Studios for a total price of around $41 million, which then turned Angel Studios into the company now known as Rockstar San Diego. With all that out of the way, Rockstar then acquired the Red Dead IP, and I believe Capcom retaining the publishing rights for the game in Japan. The now Rockstar San Diego crunched hard to get this game up and running. The game released in May of 2004 for US, and the PAL version was released June 11, 2004 for both Xbox and PlayStation 2. It was later re-released on the PS4 PlayStation Network store October 11, 2016, and Xbox One November 15th, 2021. With that, we will go on and look into the gameplay. Red Dead Revolver to me is a linear third-person shooter with action and adventure elements. The game is broken down into levels which, like you would assume, in a shooter, you have to shoot things, mostly other people. You also have to score during these levels, which is actually your in-game money. Based on where you shoot someone, you can potentially get more money per kill, the head giving you the most per hit, which I believe was $8. Now, another part of this is you can actually chain your kills together. So, for example, if you kill two guys by shooting them in the head, you could get 16 times $2. And if you're fast enough, you can keep chaining these kills throughout the level. Outside of this, you also were able to get a bit of money at the end of each level, which is treated as a bounty for the level's most prolific character. The game also scores you on 4 other accomplishments in the game, and that is accuracy, how much damage you took, how long you took in the level, and your biggest combo. Now, it doesn't give you in-game on how good is considered good, or if you get excellent. The only real way to know is there's a little star that shows up next to it. If you get 2 of these, you get an unlockable. If you get 3 to 4 of these stars, then you actually get 2 unlockables. These unlockables could be anywhere from vital to useless, depending on if you play the multiplayer game mode. But you could potentially get new characters, weapon upgrades, locations unlocked for multiplayer, and max health or Deadeye upgrades. Speaking of which, between most chapters, you get to hang out in a place called Brimstone. This is where you will spend most of your money you have acquired throughout the game. Buying stuff here can be pretty ambiguous though. For example, it will show you what you're unlocking, journal pages for lore building, more characters, weapons, places, etc. However, it doesn't really tell you what character you're unlocking or what contents of the journal pages you are buying. Outside of this are the main thing anyone playing will be interested in, which are the weapons. Each level you get to select your loadout, which is a pistol, some kind of rifle or shotgun, and then some sort of thrown weapon. Honestly, if you want to min-max this game pretty early on, the revolver is the best handgun by far, and even more so upgraded until you beat the game, that is. But each gun in your loadout is a standard affair for shooters. Your revolver will be strong up until mid-range. You have your rifles for long range, which allow you to zoom in quite a bit, and also have some good power. Shotguns for up close, then you have thrown weapons, which doesn't really matter at all. But if you do feel like using them, there are multiple kinds to do different things. You have Molotovs, dynamite, snake oil, knives, and just regular beer bottles in a couple of levels. When killing an enemy in a level, they will drop their own gun. If it's one you haven't looted before, it will give you the chance to try it out, and it will even be added to your armory of weapons you get to choose from between levels. Most of these levels outside of 1 or 2 usually work the same way. You will work your way through a level, killing fodder until you get towards the end, and then you will have to fight some kind of wanted outlaw. Usually these characters will be some kind of exaggerated version of possible real-life outlaws, or maybe just some outlandish wacko that wants to run up to you and blow you up. Either way, once the level ends, that's when we get the screen that tells you if you've been a good girl or not. Outside of all this, we have controls, which are actually also pretty standard. Left analog stick to walk around, right to move the camera, A or X to jump, B or circle while moving to roll, Y or triangle to reload your gun while you have it out, R1 to draw your gun, which has to be held, which I find kind of odd coming from modern games, and then you have square to interact with things or to melee while your gun is out, L1 to shoot, left and right directions to swap weapons, and click left analog to crouch. Outside of horse controls and some other odd one-off uses for buttons, I think that mostly wraps up gameplay stuff, so we will go ahead and get into the story of it all. Red Dead Revolver's story starts out actually kind of nice. It shows an older gentleman strolling up to his homestead, pack in hand, as both his wife and son greet him. According to this man, he and his partner Griff have struck a vein of gold as wide as a wagon, and that has potential to run all the way through the mountain. This is all mentioned as Red asks his dad about his new gun, which his dad states is one of a pair. Only 2 are ever made, his partner Griff having the other one. They made them as a symbol of their newfound wealth. Red wants to try out his dad's gun, and his dad's like, "You fucking dumb? Maybe one day you can have this wonderful weapon, but for now, I don't want your damn Cheeto fingers on it. Take my old gun." This rusty-ass shitpile that looks like it could jam and break faster than a 2003 Ford Windstar. So Red accepts it, and we head down to the river and get our tutorial on how to shoot a gun and to pick specific spots on the body. After which we go all gung-ho and start shooting up some bottles, as well as our mom's pots and pans. Wait, uh-oh. So Nate, Red's dad, strolls up and gives her some of that cowboy riz and tells her that he will just buy her some new ones. Bro is spending money before he even has it. Me for real. Anyway, this nice moment is of course ruined by some outlaws coming to raid the homestead. So Dad calls back down to us to get the hell back to the house and help defend our shit. So now we get our first taste of battle, some real blood on our hands. As we make our way up the path to Dad, we have to take out a couple of dudes. This old pistol is just that, an old pistol. But if you aim for the head, as you should in all games levels, you can dispatch them pretty well. We clear them out with little issue, however some fellers in green uniforms appear and off-screen our dad and mom. As Red runs over, they laugh as our boy Red tries to wake up his dad. The man in front begins to pull his gun to take our boy Red out as well, but Red, full of rage, pulls his father's gun out of the fire nearby and blows this murderer's arm off. In the chaos, Red runs and hides nearby as the men ride off, reliving the last few moments he had with his dad in his head while a camera pans to his bloodied hand. You can't really see it in this cutscene, but the heat of his father's gun brands the handle's icon into Red's hand, a scorpion. Moving on to the next bit, we skip some time to where Red is older. Now a young adult, he travels through the West as a bounty hunter. The camera shows us the red wrap around his hand. Along with that, he has a dog following him around too. Aww. Yeah, can't see anything going wrong there. Anyway, Red comes up to a trader who's named Curly. This is where we get our first time learning to buy things. If this is your first playthrough, then it probably won't be much, but you can get a knife and some other odds and ends. After leaving the shop screen, Red and Curly are threatened by some nobodies. After taking care of them, the game teaches you a mechanic that honestly isn't too effective most of the game, and that's the cover system. Once you clear out those fools, it then teaches you the legendary Deadeye mechanic, which, if you've never played any Red Dead before, or never played as Michael DeSanta in GTA 5, then it allows you to slow time, paint your victim with markers, and then your character will fire as many shots as you painted. After learning this, you get a cutscene where you meet the heads of this band of assholes, Bloody Tom and his right and left hand men. Even if this is your first time taking care of these guys, you can just spam headshots on these guys and it takes care of them easy. After taking care of them, Curly tells Red if you take them to Widow's Patch, a nearby town, that Red could collect the bounty on them. So Red takes Curly's cart and loads up the kills and brings them to Widow's Patch. Arriving at Widow's Patch, Red speaks with the world's most useless sheriff, Sheriff O'Grady. Due to the other gang's occupation of town, O'Grady has nothing to give Red at this time. Unfortunately, Red's dog, well, I'll just show you the clip again. So as any respective badass who owns a dog who dies, goes on a killing spree, taking out the ugly gang. In this process, however, we learn how to duel. We fight 2 or 3 lieutenants of the ugly gang, and then we meet Mr. Ugly himself, Ugly Chris. During this fight, he will carry O'Grady around, and if you have a good enough accuracy, you can just shoot him a few times in the head and be alright. In the tussle of being handled like your average twink in Las Vegas, Sheriff O'Grady needs to go to the doctor in Brimstone. With that, we hop on a train and head there. Now, honestly, I'm not sure if this is because of the nostalgia I feel, or because I feel that this is my most replayed level, but this is probably my favorite level in the game, mainly because it feels so fast and chaotic. First things first, we have a duel with an old man in the train car before some bandits start raiding the train. So Red hops out onto the train and starts clearing these bandits all the way down to the caboose. Here, you fight one of 2 Pedrosa brothers. Right after this happens... No, I'm just kidding. The bandits take over the engine of the train and speed it up to like 20 miles an hour, which will cause it to fly off the tracks. So now, from back to front, like some kind of weirdo, Red has to fight his way to the engine. This time, you get to learn about the crouch mechanic, as you have to crouch under beams and jump over low platforms, all while bandits are jumping off said platform. When you get to the front, you kill the second Pedrosa brother. For you trivia heads out there, Pedrosa is the name of one of the devs. The more you know. After this, the engineer will heal you up, and then you must defend the train from more bandits. For 2 minutes, these guys will ride in on horses. Once they get close, some will try to jump on or just shoot at the engineer. If he dies, you have to restart. Once your 2 minutes are up, you stop in Brimstone. What I would call a hub world here. You buy your guns and journal entries and such. When you help O'Grady off the train, the Brimstone sheriff wants you to stop by his office. He's got need of someone like Red. After buying what you want and listening to some of the local dialogue nonsense, head into the sheriff's office for the beginning of a series of bounty hunts. The sheriff will tell you that he needs to do some spring cleaning in his territory by taking out some of the trash. He shows you a bounty of a man known as Pig Josh, a large man so obsessed with dynamite us Unohana fanboys look normal. And I'm not joking, you'll see. He also tells us on our way out to look for an Englishman, Jack Swift, who seems to be hanging out with some of these weirdos. We arrive at an old abandoned building where there is no life in sight other than our English friend Jack stuck up in a cage. Red doesn't think much about this at first until some of Pig Josh's minions appear. These guys consist of overweight guys wearing makeup and a couple of little people also dressed as clowns. Funny enough, for the first stage of this fight, you can leave Jack in the cage, but to progress the level, you actually have to let him out. Once the first wave of goons are dispatched, Jack tells you to get on the historically accurate mounted gun. While it is fun, I don't normally do this as it's fucking garbage. Not only is it terrible at aiming, but you lose so much towards your accuracy goal at the end of the level, which is balls if you're trying to unlock everything. So I just take care of them the classic Old West way, which is with a revolver. After this, our target Pig Josh shows up, and I will tell you now, if you do this fight the normal person way, it sucks. Pig Josh's main attack is to run up to you, blocking his head with a shield and blowing himself up next to you. It's bad. When I was a wee lad though, I found out that if you go to the very top part of the main building and stand on the archway, he can't get you. So all you have to do is stand there until he, quote, loses sight of you, unquote, and then when he steps out of the building, shoot him in the head over and over until he sees you again, and then rinse and repeat. It makes this boss battle 1,000 times easier. After this is done, Jack leaves your side to go deal with an issue he has. And so we leave Red behind for a moment as we take over playing as Jack Swift for a level. This happens every so often throughout this game, but Jack is our first. Now Jack plays just like Red in every single way except a few things. Jack's Deadeye, instead of painting targets, just uses an aimbot and paints them all for you. He also uses twin revolvers, which are awesome, but as you expect, take a long ass time to reload. So we follow Jack back to Widow's Patch, where Red's dog just so happened to leave our party, except it's spooky and nighttime. I always felt that this might be close to the kind of supernatural stuff that Capcom intended for their version of Red Dead, which I always thought wouldn't be bad for a spin-off Red Dead game or something like that. Oh yeah, so Jack has some bad blood with Professor Perry and his carnies. Apparently he ran around with them at one point until things stopped going well. So Jack has come to collect one way or another and stumbles upon a damsel, which I believe is O'Grady's daughter that he left back there for some ungodly reason. As he goes for the save, a knife gets launched at him and we get put into the shoes of this fine gentleman. At first, we take on a knife thrower, Slade, I believe. Then, after he gets low enough in health, a man pops out of a burning building, LaRouche, a flame spitter. Facing these guys, you also have to deal with more little people and some other carnies. Once you take care of these two, Professor Perry makes his appearance. Perry toys with Jack a bit, using smoke to seemingly disappear from one location to another. Once we are back to playing, Perry will annoyingly teleport around the buildings of the map. However, O'Grady's distressed daughter will sometimes call out hints on where he is. Another addition to this fight is a mini-boss and more fodder who will attack you as well. Usually 2 or 3 headshots clear these dudes out pretty well. Once Perry gets down to a certain health amount, he will drink his snake oil and heal, which draws this fight out more than it honestly should. The teleporting gimmick and the minions attacking you on their own are fine, but when the boss heals a large amount of health 3 times, in a row, it kind of actually makes this a hair-pulling fight. After Perry is dealt with, we get to save the girl. Jack, however, wishes it was more monetarily satisfying, or whatever the hell this beans and toast guy says, to which O'Grady's daughter says, well damn, if that's all you wanted, you could go to the Brimstone dueling tournament, the winner gets $5,000. Jack immediately sets off to Brimstone to hang out there until the actual tournament happens. We then go back to being Red in Brimstone. We also get the money that we gathered while playing the Jack level. Next level is another bounty Sheriff Bartlett gives us. A woman living out in the mountains, Bad Bess. Here we fight up the mountain, and much like Pig Josh, we have a boss battle. This one is a lot more bearable. All we have to do is dodge Bess when she tries to whip us. I know it's hard for some of you sickos to do so, but hey, not trying to be a yum yucker. Rinse and repeat those S-tier headshots you've been working on so far, and she falls too. Here we actually get some dialogue from Red, hate to kill a lady, which shows us that even though he is a rough and on-the-road bounty hunter, he still has some values. We love a good woman respecter. Next, we go straight into the third and final mission of Sheriff Bartlett's Clean Up the West missions by going after a Undertaker, Mr. Black. Here you go through a ghost town and then have to duel against 3 dudes, which you are allowed to lose, actually, before going on to the cemetery to fight Mr. Black himself, who actually carries a coffin on his back, which he flips around and pulls out a Gatling gun, which I remember surprising me back when I first played this. All you have to do is hide behind the tree and he actually won't be able to hit you. Then, while he is flipping back to walking around, you have to shoot him to stun him. After that, congrats, now we can really get into the meat of the story here. You return to the sheriff to get your gold, which apparently Red has not been paid for any of these 3 bounties yet. Bartlett says that the train with the gold hasn't come in and that Red needs to take it up with the bank. As we walk in there, we see a disgruntled young woman, Annie, talking to the bank manager about not being able to pay her land fees and needs more time to raise the money. The manager says the bank owner would not appreciate that, who apparently is also the governor. We learn that the governor has been buying all the land in the area and paying Annie's farmhands to leave, so she is unable to make ends meet. The bank manager tells her to sell the land and come live in town and work in the saloon. Annie, for obvious reasons, is pissed. Why does the governor need all this land and money? He gets enough gold out of Bear Mountain. What does her land have anything to do with that? She storms out furious as Red pops in to ask about his money. Apparently, this bank manager retains all his youth and good looks by giving people bad news. He tells Red they can't pay right now, so Red inquires about the gold in Bear Mountain Annie was talking about. The manager says the bank can't talk about customers' personal business. To compromise, Red nicely asks with the care and demure of a songbird where Annie lives so he can go ask her about it, and so it cuts to us playing as Annie Stokes. Annie primarily uses a special rifle in the game known as Faith. She can use a pistol too, but for some reason it just doesn't feel right. Annie also has a Deadeye ability which creates a large explosion in front of her. It's okay, but in the open area like her ranch for example, it doesn't really do much for you. So we arrive at Annie's ranch where a note is left by seemingly her last farmhand, Sam. They have been bought out and now Annie has come upon the scene of a few guys on horses trying to burn the place down. We dispatch these guys, we save our cows from the flames, we have a quick little shooting gallery section where we shoot more guys as they try to cross a creek, and after this we get 2 more guys riding into the farm which ride on buffalo. One looks like it can set off a stampede while the other one can lasso you, Red Dead Redemption style. This is another one of those fights that you can actually cheese by standing on ye old outhouse and shoot them as they try to charge you or run by. After this, Red makes his appearance asking about Bear Mountain and all this gold. Annie doesn't know much, but refers to Red to the old coots that sit around in the bar in Brimstone. They seem to know a bit. After this, Annie is lamenting about losing her house and basically her livelihood. Red flips Sam's note around and hands it to Annie, which looks like it's an ad for the Brimstone Battle Royale, the one that Jack found out about earlier. Annie sees the 5K prize in gold, enough to pay off her debts. Red has already left, heading back to Brimstone. As we refocus on Red, he is grabbing a shot as he overhears the old bastards behind him talking about a man, a specific man missing an arm, who replaced it with a cannon of all things. Red recalls the man's arm he shot off that night at his parents' farm, and so with good reason he is curious, asking the men how did he lose his arm. The old guys blow him off. No, not like that, you sickos, saying it's none of his business. Red, again in the calmest, most indirect way, asks these guys again, which they refuse. As they are in this tense moment, a bar fight breaks out, and goddamn, this is the worst mission in the game. We have no weapons this time, and we have to defend the saloon girls while also getting thrown around ourselves. We get to use beer bottles, probably the weakest weapon in the game. Because of this, you are meleeing and throwing these things around the bar for probably a solid 5 to 10 minutes. These fellas you fight will fall down, but only get knocked out. You only know when you have fully killed them when their hats fly off. After this, we move into the stage area where the old fools are still laughing and having a great time. Red tries to get the information from them, but they are done talking. Luckily, before we walked in here, one of the saloon girls hands us our guns, so we get to have a duel, which we didn't have for a while up to this point, but it's just one guy this time. After that, we fight this big guy who started the bar fight to begin with. His buddies and saloon girls, we spent all that time saving them and now they want to take us out? Bullshit. Anyway, the big guy, Sam, the same one that is Annie's farmhand, throws barrels down at us from the upper balconies. We shoot him a couple times and he decides to jump down to fight us. He will charge us like a silly Crash Bandicoot or Looney Tunes character. You can stun him by running him into any of the overturned tables, and then when those are gone, you have to play chicken with him to run him into the walls and stun him. Once all this has been taken care of, Sheriff Bartlett comes in to take Red in for killing every able-bodied man, and some women, to jail, and based on the cutscene, we really massacred the place. Red surrenders to Bartlett and gets taken to jail. The first thing Bartlett says to us, by the way, is we should have known better than to stick our nose where it didn't belong, which I think is quite hilarious because if I walked into my local saloon, all the townsfolk dead, I'm not thinking, damn, Red shouldn't have been so nosy. I'd be getting backup since one man did all this damage and hopefully arrested him and seen him swing. But maybe they had some kind of off-screen conversation before we moved on to the, hey Red, stop being a nosy man. Anyway, Red asked the sheriff about the one-armed man. Bartlett humors him and asks what for. Red tells Bartlett that this one-armed man killed his parents. Bartlett finally connects the dots and figures out that Red is Nate Harlow's kid. Red asks Bartlett what he knows about the death of his parents. Bartlett then proceeds to regale us about a story, one where the U.S. military is trying to cross the border into Mexico. To prevent this, a general of the Mexican army and his troops try to defend the bridge. This general is known as Diego, and this is the one we play as in this mission, and to this day is probably the hardest mission in the game, in my opinion, with maybe 2 exceptions. Diego is also a rifle user. His deadeye is a flare, which when he shoots will land on your target. This will then summon a barrage of cannonballs to hit that location. So as Diego, we have 2 troops on our side as we fight off the US Army. Our plan is to blow up the bridge so they can't cross. First, we have a standard shootout. Here is when I always lose my 2 troops, and then we get the signal our cannons are ready. So we can use our deadeye ability to shoot the cannons on the US side and have them destroyed. This is very, very finicky, as sometimes the cannons do not get destroyed. It's a lot of trial and error. After a while, we start to become overwhelmed with the US forces, so blowing up the bridge is put into action. We get 2 more troops to help us plant bombs on the bridge, and we have to defend them. They can die quickly. This is where it may take me a few tries. The issue with this level is there's no checkpoint or anything. It just restarts the level from the very beginning. But once the bombs are finally planted and the bridge is gone, a cutscene plays where some of Diego's troops capture some US troops and a feller in a raccoon hat. This guy is Griff. This is Nate Harlow's partner. This is also the current governor of the territory at the present time. Anyway, Diego thinks that this is a US spy and wants him killed. Griff pleads with Diego to let him live and if he could partner up with him on a gold mine that he found. Diego agrees, but Griff tells him of another issue. Half the claim is owned by his partner, Nate. Diego asks what would happen if he killed Nate, to which Griff replies that would probably make them partners. They shake on it right then and there, and that sets the events of what happens at the farmhouse that night, as Diego sends Colonel Darren to go kill Nate and his family. As we come back to the jailhouse, Red now has his sights set on taking care of Diego, Darren, and Griff. Bartlett says if he manages to kill Diego and bring proof, that the charges against Red for his murder spree in the saloon would be dropped. Bartlett mentions that a stagecoach goes through the Sunset Canyon that moves Diego's gold to Governor Griffin, so as Red, we head over there right away. First things first is we have to shoot our way through some Mexican troops up to a ruin that holds our trusty steed for this level. Once we hop on it, we are met with the stagecoach and we have to destroy it. This is easier said than done our first time in this level, as there is a mounted gun on the back of that stagecoach that will chew through our health. Another fun thing about this fight is that even though shooting the stagecoach lowers its health, it will lower your overall accuracy percentage at the end of the level. So to avoid this, you have to hit the enemies that lean out to the side to shoot you, as well as the driver, which is a huge pain in the ass. Honestly, the stagecoach goes along the same route through the whole level, so you could post up with a rifle and a decent firing lane and just shoot the driver. It may make the level take a little longer, but I believe the time rating on this level is pretty generous. Anyway, blowing up the stagecoach, Red begins to creep up on it as right behind him, Colonel Darren, the one-armed man, knocks him out, and Diego appears here as well. Diego wants to keep him alive. He has questions for him. Overlooking this whole mess, we see a Native American who slinks away. This is the next character we'll be playing as in the next level, Red's cousin, Shadow Wolf. Shadow Wolf is related to Red through Red's deceased mother, who was a Native American herself, if you couldn't tell from the voice acting at the beginning.
Harlow, what are you doing to my pots and pans?
She is from the same tribe, and through lore pages in the game, Red and Shadow Wolf used to play a lot as kids. Anyway, Wolf tells his chief of Red's capture, to which his chief tells him to go free him, so we get to do a mission at Bear Mountain, a place where all the gold is being mined for Diego and the governor. Shadow Wolf has his own deadeye, which allows him to light his bow, catching enemies on fire. If used right, it does a lot of damage. This is some kind of attempt at a stealth mission, which we will have to deal with after this as well. Nothing too notable here as we crawl through Bear Mountain. Some of the dialogue here is hilarious between Mexican troops and the miners.
Any more of those beans left? See, but they're cold. Like everything up here.
When we reach the end, we have to fight Grizzly, a member of a Native American tribe who sold themselves out to General Diego. Grizzly likes to jump from totem to totem and then proceeds to throw knives at you. If you shoot him while he does this, you can stun him for a bit and he will fall off. He may try to slash you. If he does, it covers you in snake oil as well. Defeating him, he holds the keys to Red's jail cell, which Wolf opens up in the next level. Back to playing as Red, we are imprisoned alongside a soldier who looks to be a part of the US Army. We will talk more about him in a bit. I'm going to be honest here. This is where the game falls off a bit for me, as the mines level takes such an unnecessarily long time. Starting out, we don't get any weapons other than our knife, which we can throw, and if thrown right, can one-shot enemies. However, the thing that sucks about this level is they mostly frame this to be a stealth mission. I never follow this. As soon as I get a gun, I'm using it. You have to run around a few parts of this place to get keys that lead to a 3-man duel, which is way easier than the one in the ghost town, by the way. None of these guys have much health. After this, you find yourself in a circular mine where you have to fight 2 brothers, one who shoots you while the other one throws Molotovs, which if you catch on fire, you can manage to catch one of them on fire by touching them yourself and do massive damage. It also makes me laugh every time I manage to do it. We bust out of the mines and head on to Fort Diego, but before that, we have to pad out the game's climax by having a whole level for a shooting gallery. This time we play as an unnamed Buffalo Soldier. I would call him by his name if it ever appeared, but to this day it has never been confirmed, so I will just call him Soldier. If you'd like to know why he is called Buffalo Soldier, then search it up, as I had a whole section where I was going to explain this and my thoughts on it, but that would not be appropriate for this video, as this is about a game and not my thoughts on possibly prejudiced nicknames and segregation issues. So anyway, the soldier escapes to the road where he asks a man driving a stagecoach to help him get to the nearest town so he can alert the US Army to come and take care of Diego's men. We stand on top of the wagon, full of TNT by the way, as we defend it from Diego's men coming to try to kill Soldier. Soldier has Deadeye, which is kind of a large blast, but it isn't very good for this level, as it can potentially damage the stagecoach. So the driver will call out where the enemies will appear from and you have to take care of them. Sadly, they can do a lot of damage to the wagon if left unchecked. Another mechanic that is added to this section is Soldier can lay down prone and protect himself from fire as well. Unfortunately for this, it's not helpful as 9 times out of 10, they are aiming at the wagon, so in my opinion, there is no real reason for this whatsoever. Soldier's rifle is also super strong, as most of the time if you hit an enemy, it one-shots them, hence the shooting gallery feel I get from this level. After some time defending out here in the open plains from Diego's men, we arrive at some cliffs. Here we have to defend the wagon from Native Americans instead of Diego's people. Here at this point, I am playing this game, and this happens every time I do a playthrough of this game. I just felt like they tried to pad this game out too much, or they thought of some cool ideas or mechanics and only implement them once, and then they are never seen again. I think I start thinking about that around this time because there's not a whole lot of movement going on, at least from me as a player, as I'm just standing in place and firing away at dudes with no remorse for who it is, and that's why I feel like after the jailbreak mission, the game falls off quite a bit for me when trying to keep my interest. Anyway, we get to the end of the cliffs and we have to hop off the wagon. This is when we get a shot of a very large White House-looking building where we see Soldier going into the office, only to find Governor Griffin. Soldier tries to warn Griffin about Diego's men, however, as we know, Diego and Griff are buddies, and so Griffin captures Soldier and keeps him locked up. After this, we get to go back to being Red. This next mission might actually be the hardest mission in the game, and that's only because of the sheer amount of damage the enemy does with little to no health pickups that get dropped. So it starts out with Red and Wolf at Fort Diego as they immediately get pinned by a mounted gun turret. Wolf wants Red to find a way around the turret and take care of it from the back. So we have to scale up the building and fight our way through the fort in a horseshoe pattern all the way to the turret. On the way, we will lose about 2/3 of our health, and when we get the health pickups at the end of this fight, they are around 5 to 10%, which seems like a bit, but not when there are guys who are dealing 20 to 25% of damage. So once we take care of the turret and the guys out in the yard, we get to have an actually pretty good boss battle. We fight Colonel Darren, who has just severely injured Shadow Wolf. We fight him in the main area of this fort, and we weave between the bits of crumbling walls while Darren tries to blind us and shoot us with his cannonball arm, which, depending on how much health you can have at this point, you can get one shot. Now, the bad thing here is that you will have to restart this level all over again if you die anywhere in this mission. Darren could have a sliver of health left and kill you, and you don't get a checkpoint at the beginning of the fight with him. Once he is dead, we go over to Wolf, who is laying on the ground dying. He gives us a few parting words as he takes his last breath and slumps down in Red's arms. I'm actually genuinely pretty sad about how Shadow Wolf dies here, as I'm just thinking about this is Red's last close relative and he just watched the light leave his eyes. It's really sad. Red takes Shadow Wolf's knife and stabs it into Darren's chest to show the bravery of Shadow Wolf and his sacrifice. As this is happening, we hear a train whistle in the distance. Diego is trying to leave on his war train to escape, so we need to head out and take care of this asshole. So we move on to the next mission, a train mission. This mission is relatively easy compared to the others that we've had to deal with. In this one, we have to use our horse to jump onto the train and shoot levers as we make our way through clearing Diego's men and avoiding turret and cannon fire. Once we get up to a certain point, a man on a handcar will appear on the opposite rail line with a mounted gun on it. Your job here is to use the mounted gun to shoot the train engine itself by shooting all the metal plates off of it. Once you do this, the train will stop moving and your boss fight with General Diego starts. At first, he will pop out of windows and use his flares to target the cannons at you. The good news is that you can get close enough to the train's cars that neither Diego nor the cannons can get you. After Diego gets down to about half health, he comes out to fight you, the old-fashioned way, by using the cannons and having men shoot at you as well. At this point, Diego is pretty much a pushover and you can easily dodge the flares and kill his men. Once you kill him, you get a cutscene of him crawling back away from Red, pleading for his life. Gold, women, weapons. Basically, buying off Red. Red doesn't say shit like a real stone-cold killer and blows Diego's brains out across the tracks in the prairie. There's only one guy left to deal with, Governor Griffin. But oops! We forgot something. We have to go back to Brimstone and partake in the Battle Royale. Now, I love this mission. It's actually pretty good. However, I feel like it should have been earlier in the game. The reason being that Governor Griffin is here. We know he's the problem, but we still come here and enter the contest where his best hired gun has won 4 years in a row, and 2 of our best friends have entered as well. This Battle Royale is a battle to the damn death, by the way, and there is no way to shoot the guns out of these guys' hands or anything. So we get to do 2 duels before we have a little night at the saloon. We can talk to Jack as well as the 4-year reigning champion, Mr. Kelly. So next day we go to our first duel for the day. It's with Mr. Kelly. But before we start, Sheriff Bartlett gets shoved out before Griffin comes out and disqualifies Jack and Annie Stokes, which honestly will be his downfall in the future. So now we have to fight Mr. Kelly, and this guy is a cheater pumpkin eater. He is fast as hell, and it might take you a few tries, as it did with me back in the day. But if you succeed, the governor pulls out his Scorpion revolver, the same one Red's dad had on Red along with his men, stating that Red has done a good job getting this far, but enough is enough. He tells Mr. Kelly to get up and to kill Red and to meet him later at his house for Sunday brunch. Then we get a boss battle that seems quite unfair in my opinion. Every boss up to this point has had some sort of way to stun and do massive damage to them, but I could never really figure out how to trigger his stun if he even has one. You have to fight Mr. Kelly on the streets of Brimstone without killing too many civilians, as it fails the mission. As I said, you don't do a whole lot of damage, so you have to peek around corners Rainbow Six style to be able to hit him while also aggroing him enough to where he is focused on you and not killing the residents. After quite some time, Red manages to kill Mr. Kelly. Jack and Annie converge on the body as Bartlett comes out of wherever they knocked him out at, and Red asks him where he can find Griffin, to which Bartlett leads him to the governor's mansion. The place, however, is built like a fort and not a crumbled, abandoned fort like Diego's fort, a fort like a guy who knows how to spend his share of a 50-50 split of a gold mine. This is the last series of fights in this game, but we will have Jack and Miss Stokes with us for the last bit. Arriving at the governor's fort mansion, we see the place crawling with U.S. soldiers, as well as some of the fine-suited gentlemen that he surrounds himself with. These guys are known as the Cornet brothers, and there are a lot of them. So everyone begins the attack. Annie takes one way, Red goes straight at the front, and Jack takes whatever's left. Health bars appear for both Jack and Annie, so we have to make sure that they don't die, or we have to restart. Good news is there are a lot of checkpoints in this level. First things first, we have to take care of the first Cornet on the balcony trying to snipe us. He deals a lot of damage. The next brother comes out, and you basically have to play Ring Around the Rosie with him before you or one of the other 2 kill him. Annie believes she could get the gang in through one of the doors off to the side, so we follow and protect her for a bit before she gets to one of the doors on the second story before giving up. Jack is tired of this running around and gives up and just wants to pick the damn lock on the front door. This section is probably the most difficult of these levels, as you have to protect Jack for 2 minutes while he is out in one of the most open spots on the map. Jack only needs to get shot 3 or 4 times by a bayonet rifle to die, and Annie also needs to be looked after sometimes, as she won't shoot the guy that appears right next to her. Cornet brothers will also continue to appear and try to rush in quickly for the glory of killing Jack Swift, but at the end of the 2 minutes, you feel you've just fought Melania in Elden Ring. Once inside, you are greeted by a massive amount of troops, We have to work our way through the mansion with the help of Jack on his own, as Annie went a different way. Making your way through a few of the rooms, you eventually have to face another Cornet brother. You then get a message about one of the walls looking strange. This triggers Red opening up a secret entrance, but to our disdain, more Cornet brothers show up behind us. Jack stays behind to deal with them as Red moves into the secret area. Moving through here, dispatching more guys, we come across Annie, who basically killed the janitor and got all the keys to the mansion, but she has found no signs of the governor. As Red and Annie move through the building, they find and free Soldier, who joins us in the fight. Annie, however, moves on to go find Jack, leaving Red and Soldier to go into Griffin's office, where we have to duel with another Cornet brother. I swear these dudes' mom had to be like popping out the babies out like Big Mom for there to be this many brothers. Once we do this, we move up to the roof and the last place to be checked in the mansion. And lo and behold, we find Governor Griffin with some more men. This is the final stand. Griffin has blocked us getting to him with a large metal door, but Soldier has some explosives he can plant. We just need to kill all the guys first and bring down Griffin's health. Unfortunately, Griff catches onto this and sets off his own explosive, which causes the metal grate to land on Soldier. Red tried to pull the gate off, but Soldier tells him to go on without him. So now we have one last duel with Griffin. This duel is tough. When the cutscene ends, Griffin just draws. He doesn't wait for you to draw at all. You can die on this duel easily, as Griffin wields the strongest gun in the game, the Scorpion Revolver. If this is your first time dueling him, it will take you a few tries. This duel really is about who has the better timing, you or an AI from 2003. If you manage to defeat him, you get the last cutscene in the game. Red drops Griffin at Bartlett's feet, who gives him a good kick as Annie and Soldier limp into view. Red asks about Jack, but no one says anything. They killed my man off screen, which no matter how many times I play this, it pisses me off. Bartlett says that Red did a good job. However, the army is going to come sniffing around here soon. Red will need to continue moving like he always has. Bartlett offers the 5K in gold to Red, to which Red declines. After this, he hands Soldier his old pistol and takes the Scorpion Revolver for himself. He tells Bartlett to give the gold to Annie and Soldier and begins to walk off. It never was about the money, Red says before the game cuts to credits. Absolute cinema. For beating the game, you unlock hard mode for the story, bounty missions, which have you complete special objectives in the missions you've already played, and you also get the Scorpion Revolver. If you replay the game, you keep all of your money, weapons, and health, as well as Deadeye upgrades. Though certain missions will still lock you to certain guns, but if you're playing Red, you basically have a golden gun. If you beat the game on hard mode, you actually unlock Redwood Revolver mode, which has you play as Manny Quinn. He replaces Red in cutscenes, loading screens, and in-game, of course. His Deadeye is catching himself on fire, which allows you to in turn catch others on fire. Outside of this, you have a showdown mode, which you can play with all the characters you've just unlocked, or look at some of the in-game story that is never discussed during the main game of the story, which is where I got most of my info. So with that, we'll move on to the goods and bads of the game, which you've mostly heard throughout this video. If you've been here this long, no worries, it's about over. So you've heard throughout most of this video kind of what my issues playing this game are, so I will keep this light by just going back and recalling some of the stuff that gave me issues and some of the things I like. First off, I like what they tried to do by adding some of these mechanics to the game, like sneaking and what have you. The implementation was there for sure, but a lot of the times these added mechanics were only one-off situations when using them. The mechanics were, you could go prone if they allowed you to crawl around and say the mines level, for example, to allow you more freedom to try to sneak around like they wanted you to feel. This would have been a pretty cool idea. I think one of the other things is honestly this game is ugly, which sucks for me to say since I don't look for good graphics, especially since most of the games you find here are older. But Angel Studios was on the cutting edge of graphics technology back then, and by the time this game came out, a lot of companies were getting the maximum out of these game consoles. I even upscaled the game in my emulator to try to make it look better, and all it really did was show the flaws more. I also feel like the game is kind of all over the place, and there seems to be a lot of unnecessary padding at some points. However, the game adds quite a bit of replayability with its extra challenges and different difficulty modes. This game was in development for some time, and its cancellation and resurrection probably helped in its decent length of dev time, but I feel if they worked a little more on it and polished out some of the issues above, it would be a great Western game. As far as arcade fun, I do come back to it from time to time, but I actually go back and play a different Western game from that area, which is the open world Western Gun, which I believe may have helped influence Rockstar's sequels to this game that are by far some of my favorite games to this day. You can't really call Red Dead Revolver a direct prequel to these games, but as far as how Rockstar wrote their stories, how we got some good lore writing in the journal along with the story's main game, Red Dead as an IP, in my opinion, was destined for greatness after this. Because of its legacy, because of its memorable lines, and the ability to pull me into the spaghetti western, weird west genres as a whole, I have to give Red Dead Revolver a 4 out of 5 on the nostalgia scale, as I have and will come back to play it many times in the future, along with the Redemption series of games as well. If you've played Red Dead Revolver, like the video and leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. If you want to see more of these videos from me, I usually post them once a month, so subscribe if you want to see more. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.